So everybody welcome. This is Julia Sanagata, one of the automation and information solutions specialist managers here at Rumsey Electric. Thank you for hopping on and joining our Tuesday weekly full access webinar series. As you guys probably know, we're hosting these every week, so one of the specialists can provide you some type of insider information, product detail, specialized knowledge that they might have. So today's session is how to start your analytics journey. Dave Flores is going to be our presenter. He is one of our automation specialists who is pretty familiar with analytics from all levels of complexity. So with that, Dave, I will turn it over to you to start us down our analytics journey.
All right, thanks, Julia. As Julia mentioned, my name is Dave Flores. I'm an automation specialist. I've been with Rumsey for about 9 years, a little over 9 years now. I started as an inside specialist and transitioned into focusing into specific geographic areas such as Chester and Delaware counties in PA. And I'm also our local expert on small controllers, so Micrologics and Micro 800 PLCs. So in today's session, we'll be covering two main topics. The first being an overview of analytics and a recommended way to start your analytics journey. And then the second part will be covering an analytics appliance that will help you in starting your analytics journey and the benefits that we see with that. So first, let's start off by defining analytics. At a high level, analytics refers to collecting and moving data, then relating it to something meaningful, such as important business decisions, operational equipment efficiencies, or OEE, predictive maintenance, among many other things. Data analytics also helps identify a trend or correlation that may have gone unnoticed, like machine jams due to a PLC or drive fault, or cost savings when a machine's scheduled maintenance is during a particular time of day. So what you may not know is where this data begins and the journey it takes through a business structure to arrive at a meaningful place to make an important decision. So we'll take a look at an analytics journey, which typically starts at the device level. However, it's important to understand where else this data can be used throughout the business structure. So we want to first start at the device level, which is down at the bottom left there. And this is where the raw data is collected from an end device, such as a PLC or a drive. And then at the system level, it uses that same data and combines it with other raw data for an entire machine or a line. And then at the enterprise level, it looks at data for an entire plant or production facility. So there's different kinds of meaningful information at each of these levels. But for now, we're just going to stick to the device level of analytics, where the raw data lives. And then aside from that, there are different categories of analytics. And we're going to first start off by reviewing what descriptive analytics are. This describes an event that happens in the past, such as an alarm fault, a fault, or historical trend. And some smart devices, such as VFDs and PLCs, are prime examples of devices that already have this data available to them. And then next is diagnostic analytics. This correlates the data to determine why something happened. Like, let's say a drive faults every time there's a jam on a machine. It's correlating that drive fault to a jam. And then predictive analytics, which expands upon the diagnostics by applying algorithms to data sets, trends, and correlations that predict when something is going to happen. And an example would be drive's current output is very high, and it's about to fault and cause a jam in the production line. And then lastly, we have prescriptive analytics. This not only predicts when something's going to happen, but will also provide a solution. So an example there would be the drive's current is very high. Let's check the conveyor for any potential jam indicators or incoming drive parameters to make sure they're within tolerance levels so the drive doesn't fault in the first place. So for today's session, we're just going to focus on the highlighted area there where our data will begin its journey using the device, using device level descriptive and diagnostic analytics. The reason why we're starting here is because analytics could become very complex very fast. And to attempt an enterprise level analytics from the start you can easily get your wheels spinning. Uh, the area where we're going to start will have a lot of valuable information in which we can build a nice foundation for your analytics journey moving forward. So data analytics starts at the device level, right? What kind of descriptive and diagnostic information can we expect to find at the device level? And that data would be device health data. Um, Device health may not be a term you're familiar with, but it refers to the device's operating state, which would include any faults. Is the device running? Is it stopped? Does it need maintenance? Is it configured properly? Networking diagnostics, among many other different types of parameters, which we'll kind of get into a little bit later on. Now we can certainly gather all of this information from an end device such as a PLC, drive, networking switch, or HMI. Um, but it requires a lot of engineering time to program, implement, and especially update all of those different parameters when configuring something. And we want to kind of shift gears here a little bit and talk about an analytics appliance that automatically collects and displays descriptive and diagnostic level analytics for you with absolutely no programming required. And we feel that this is the ideal starting point for an analytics journey. And that device is FactoryTalk Analytics for devices. It's been out for quite a while, but we feel that this is a really good tool to really help start that analytics journey for you. So what is FactoryTalk Analytics for devices? Well, it's an appliance that sits on the Ethernet network and passively scans to find device health information for up to 100 different devices that's on an Ethernet IP network. It works with existing equipment as long as it's on the same network. So in a typical application like you see here, the analytics appliance will go out and scan the devices, find what's out there, and then gather all this device health information, um, and then give you a platform in which you can see it. You can visualize that data using either the Team One mobile app or a PC connection, or like a browser connection. Okay, so what does it do? What does this appliance do? Well, it does quite a bit of things actually. It automatically starts scanning the network to connect to any Ethernet IP device out there. It records device health information and performs analytics using built-in device profiles. It diagnoses hard to discover issues such as duplex mismatches and can even display fault code information. And it learns what issues are important to you through the use of action cards, which we'll go over in a little bit. So ultimately, it helps you improve like a mean time to repair, and it does all of this with absolutely no programming. And you're gonna hear me say that from time to time throughout the presentation, but I really want to drive that home that you get all this ridiculous information from this device without having to program anything.
I think that's a really good point, Dave, because any of the information that you're going to talk about or you just kind of listed there, it is all information that's available in the devices. But some engineer would have to sit there and go looking for the data point and go looking for the tag, the exact tag and the exact tag value, and then potentially program or send it to a historian, send it to a view screen, create a trend chart, right, for any of these different tags that are out there. But I think everybody will see how amazing it is that there's no programming. But in particular, you mentioned it on your last slide, the intermittent issues. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes and bless technology today that we don't even see it, right? Something may fault and automatically restart itself. Something may be near max performance capability, and then it comes back down again. Things that we don't even see that this type of device would catch, I believe, right? That's when you were saying intermittent things or like duplex mismatch, things that are really hard to catch. This is going out and looking at all that information.
Yeah, and I have an example that I'm gonna get to a little bit later on that how this device has actually helped me personally. Um, but I just want to take a quick step back here and um, talk about this simple. This is a simplified version of that animation that you saw earlier, where the FactoryTalk Analytics for devices fits in a automation control system. And as you can see here, it's not really a smart device, but it does communicate with them to help provide that meaningful information to a user. So now we'll get into how it's configured. It's so simple to configure. It's only a few steps. That's why I'm including it in the slides here. I just want to show you how easy it is to use, essentially. But before we configure the analytics appliance, we first need to connect to it. This is what is recommended to connect to the appliance for the first time. Simple power supply, the FactoryTalk Analytics for devices hardware, an Ethernet cable to a laptop or PLC, and then obviously any other devices that you want to scan and collect the data from. So it's really nothing fancy. In fact, you might be familiar with the setup already. The appliance has a default IP address that you connect to make the initial configuration easy. And then obviously they do have a recommended start guide for any additional information going through that process. So after we're connected to the appliance, to the FactoryTalk Analytics for devices, we'll start our configuration off by entering a name. This is basically like naming a PC. You can think of it that way. Next is to simply set the time and date. Will your appliance need automatic firmware updates? Are you going to be connecting it to the internet or not? Then you give it an IP address by either a static IP or DHCP. And just note that the IP address you give here will have to be on the same network as the devices it's going to scan. And then lastly, you're just giving it a password for admin purposes. And then after that, you're done. The appliance will restart and immediately start scanning the Ethernet IP network for devices. There's absolutely no other programming they have to do. Just this simple configuration is all you need. And then now we've gone over how to really set it up and what it does. How can we view the data? And we already mentioned the two main ways before. It's through a PC and Team 1. So for a PC, this will require just a connection to the analytics appliance. So it just has to be on the same network. This is just similar to the setup you just saw in the configuration. And then the second way is to use the mobile app Team 1. It connects to FactoryTalk Analytics for device appliance as long as it shares a wireless connection to it. With this option, gives you a little bit more flexibility for viewing the data basically on the go, which is kind of nice. And to kind of jump in the Team 1 app real quick, it's been around for a few years now. You may be familiar with the app, but in case you're not, here's just some quick snippet of information on what the app does. The Team 1 app helps coordinate and collaborate with a team for ongoing projects, maintenance, and or troubleshooting designed with the plant floor in mind. It's available in iOS and Android systems, mobile devices, that is. It's a free app, But to use it with FactoryTalk Analytics for devices, you do need to have the standard subscription, which is a yearly fee. And then Team One integrates very easily with FactoryTalk Analytics for devices and allows for immediate access to that diagnostic and device health information. And it can also send push notifications to the Team One app right to your mobile device for quicker responses and emergencies to access your data's information at a moment's notice. And after we're connected to our FactoryTalk Analytics for Devices appliance, whether through a laptop environment or Team One, what can we expect to see? How will we visualize the data? The device information is presented to the viewer in two main ways, through Action Decks and Explorer View. We'll take a look at both. The Action Decks is a collection of all the device health information that needs attention. Each device has its own action card, which has a brief overview of the device status and health information. These action cards display as a warning, a fault, or needs maintenance, and is like the front line of troubleshooting and device health awareness. Action cards give the viewer a quick snippet of information. By clicking on an action card will bring you to the device diagnostic page, which has a little bit more information on that device. And if you notice, on the bottom of each of the action cards, there's a vote up and down button. And this is used to determine the importance of that device's health to a specific user. So for example, let's say you're a maintenance manager and the VFDs are critically important to your process. You can prioritize their action cards to show up first in the list, so it's easier to distinguish them from other devices on the network, or that this device is scanning. And then the second way to visualize your data is with the Explorer view, where action cards are more visual and easy to see. The Explorer view has more detailed information and organized in more of a list. And the diagnostic view includes more information about the device's health, historical data, analytic view into a few parameters, and it takes the guesswork out of programming and gathering that diagnostics information manually and putting it into one easy to view web page. Now we'll get into profiles, and this is how the appliance knows what information to collect from a device. These profiles are used to determine what will be presented to the viewer. And a profile is basically a generic term for how much information can be collected and displayed for a specific product family. And there are three main profiles available today. The first is a default profile. And all Ethernet IP devices, even third-party devices, have at least the default profile, which includes a simple mode status, is it on, off, or faulted, and a historical trend of it. And then there's a basic profile, which is really anything but basic. It has more information that's specific to that device. And we'll take a look at that here now. An Allen Bradley device that has a basic profile. This is an example of a PowerFlex 755 drive. And in this profile, we can see the drive temperature, the output power, the output frequency, the major and minor faults. And it's trending all of these simultaneously. So when when an event occurs, like a minor fault, you can look back at the output frequency or the temperature and see what it was at the time of the fault. And there may be some correlation between them. And then again, here's another basic profile example for a compact logic controller. You can see that the parameters have changed and are trending CPU and memory utilization for the PLC, along with major and minor faults. And then in addition, it tells you what the catalog number of the PLC is up here at the top, and even what firmware revision and IP address it has on it. And remember, all of this stuff is generated automatically and without any programming. So it just goes out, scans that device, comes back with all of this information.
So Dave, I think that'd be a good spot to pause for just a second and see if anybody has any questions about that type of information that's available or other information they might be looking for to see if it would be available. I know I'm fairly amazed when I see some of this level of data, total CPU utilization, all those different voltage and amp trend charts, faults marked against the trends. But does anybody have any questions about kind of this basic profile with the Rockwell devices and what information you would see?
A quick question. For the historical data, is that kept in the analytics program, or is that something that requires the historian or some other software?
So we'll take a look at a little bit about what the historical trend data is, but it's stored in the device and only for about 2 weeks. So it's not to replace a historian by any means, but it should at least give at least a little bit of historical data for you and stored on the device. Yeah.
Is it possible to use data from other data historians besides the Rockwell product to run the analytics over a longer term?
So I know that that's something that Rockwell is looking into, and they're currently working on a connector to like PTC ThingWorks. Um, but other than that, I think they're trying to keep it separate for now until they build up the profiles enough, and then we'll probably see that as a as like a firmware update for a later release.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, though. I like that. Anybody else? Great, thank you.
Okay, and then lastly, for these data profiles is an enhanced profile, which has a little bit more information and added analytics for predictive maintenance purposes. And to basically sum up profiles, they're a generic term meaning they have more or less information available to a specific product. And then here's a list of the profiles that are available today. And as you can see, most of them have a basic profile. And I'd like to just point out that the drives, the Logix PLCs, Stratix switches are among these, with more being added during each update. The IO Link master modules are the only ones so far that have an enhanced profile, which adds some additional analytics to help determine whether a sensor will need maintenance soon if it's becoming out of tolerance. And these were added in the latest update of the firmware for the appliance.
What I love here, Dave, is pretty much, if you go back to that slide, pretty much all of your major automation equipment has this basic profile. So your compact logics and control logics processors and adapter cards, your Kinetics motion products, the newest family of panel views, the 5000 family, the PowerFlex drives, your Stratix switches, which have all sorts of information in them that's probably untouched, all your overloads. It pretty much has the gamut of your major automation systems covered.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
almost any Allen Bradley device with an Ethernet port that's the later generation will have a profile.
Very nice.
Okay, so we'll take a look at some other features here. The first one is the Shelby Chatbot. You may have heard the term Shelby used to describe FactoryTalk Analytics for devices, but because let's face it, FactoryTalk Analytics for devices is a mouthful to say. But Shelby is actually named for the AI chatbot that's used within the analytics appliance. And Shelby AI is similar to like a Google Assistant, Siri, or Alexa, where you can ask it about your devices and it'll respond in kind. It's like basically having a data scientist at your fingertips to ask it questions about your device status. And then kind of following up there with the historical trend, again, it's for about 2 weeks. And it's not to be really compared with a FactoryTalk historian, but there are plans to move it forward and communicate with other data platforms in the future for future updates. And the historical trend can be used. I have a little example here where a first shift worker clears a fault on a drive during their shift, and then the second shift worker might get that same fault and see that it happened earlier in the day, and that drive might require some further investigation. So just a really quick example of how the historical data can be used to correlate things again with all the information that it provides. And then, so we reviewed what FactoryTalk Analytics for devices is, how it's configured, how to view the device health information, and what types of health information you can expect to see through the profiles and other features. And we're going to talk about cost, and we normally don't talk about cost, but I just kind of want to like let you guys know how much information you get for what you're going to pay for it. And it's really, in the grand scheme of things, not terribly expensive to get started for your analytics journey. So the first cost structure we'll look at is the basic one. This is the bare minimum we recommend starting with. Has the analytics appliance device and a static switch. For FactoryTalk Analytics for devices, there's a one-time fee for the actual hardware, and then that's coupled with a 1-year subscription to activate it. So it's a $5,000 investment for the first year, and you get all that trend data, networking diagnostics, device health information that requires no programming, like we mentioned earlier. And then after that, it's a $2,000 subscription for each following year. And then another solution would be Wi-Fi solution with the Team One app subscription and using an HMS wireless bolt. Now remember, the FactoryTalk Analytics for devices does have the ability to send push notifications to Team One, which can result in faster response times and a mobile way to view your device health information. So for an additional $1,000, you can add wireless connectivity to all that information within the analytics appliance.
So
That's
what
the
I
last.
really, sorry,
Yep.
what I really love about that one, Dave, if you could go back one, this really kind of embodies the technology that we talk about all the time today, right, for the plant floor with having everything mobilely accessible, ready on your fingertips. So this essentially would provide your engineers, any engineers on a plant floor,
Or even
ongoing,
upper.
ongoing alerts about what's happening with the equipment, if there's been a fault, if something's nearing a high temperature, if there's a concern. And it essentially enables your machinery to start talking to you, right? Like when you enable the Team One with the mobile piece, just putting that little tiny wireless antenna, that bolt, that black thing you see there, and then having your engineers' phones connected to that, that's putting it all at their fingertips, and it's proactively alerting you, which is really kind of, we talk about devices and tablets and having everything accessible, and that's really like for $6,000, that's that my machine has started to talk to me concept, which is just awesome. Sorry for interrupting.
That's
I like
right.
that one. Then you can build on it.
And then lastly, for an additional $3,500, we can add a panel PC solution. So operators have a way to access the data at the panel itself. And this can easily be substituted by a laptop or network connection to a control room. So however you see fit on how you want to use the PC, but like most setups, there's going to be different paths to take. We just recommend this option if you plan on having a PC at the cabinet. And then I really just wanted to give you guys a feel for the cost structure on what how much you're going to invest and how much information you're going to be getting from this device. Um, so you guys can make a more educated budgetary decision on whether or not this is going to be right for you. And then we'll finish today's session kind of circling back to analytics here. And analytics, as we defined it earlier, is more of an umbrella term used for collecting and moving data and then doing something meaningful with it. We've learned today that FactoryTalk Analytics for devices is an affordable, diagnostic, and descriptive device-level analytics solution that I believe to be a great start to an analytics journey. And I'll conclude today's session with a couple of personal scenarios that on how I've used this device or how this device has helped me. The first one is we wanted to add the FactoryTalk Analytics for devices to an existing process demo, which has instrumentation, data collection, and HMIs, and ControlLogic's redundancy. And when we added the appliance, it immediately notified us that one of the ControlLogic's racks for the I/O Ethernet card had a duplex mismatch on it, which would have spelled disaster if we were running at the time. So it really helped us identify that, and pretty much immediately. And then another scenario that I have is actually something I'm working on right now. I'm currently working on a demo for a customer using FactoryTalk Analytics for devices with IO-Link. And I thought I had my demo set up correctly. I didn't see any errors on my PLC. I thought I was pretty much good to go. When I plugged in my analytics appliance, it notified me that I had one of my IO-Link channels configured incorrectly. And I was able to find that and diagnose it within a couple minutes. Otherwise, that may have taken me quite a while to finally figure out what happened. So I would consider myself an experienced programmer, and I still miss something. And this device really helped me locate and address some of those issues I didn't even really know I had. And I would just kind of finish up here with the old guy walking. But that's going to be it for today. I thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope you learned a little bit more about analytics and the FactoryTalk Analytics for Devices appliance. And if you have any questions on today's topic, please contact your Rumsey rep or a member of our ASG team.
Actually, Dave, let's pause for a minute there and open
Yeah.
it up to any other questions while everybody is on the phone, and see if there's anything else that we can answer about that. I think the bill of material you put forward is pretty straightforward if anybody wanted to give it a try. We do have a demo here, although we, for liability reasons, do not connect it up to people's networks because we don't want to start doing something on your network. But does anybody have any questions about what Dave presented or kind of getting started with analytics? Why that's a good foundation there? All right, I'll take.
Well,
Yes. Yep.
Quick question. This device you said it's good for 100 devices. What's the next step after that? Is there something that will cover more, or do you stick another of these on the network?
So it's recommended to use one of these devices for a machine. And if you can stretch it to like a whole line, you can use it that way. But recommended to use for each machine. We're a little conservative with the 100 devices there. I don't know if they'll end up changing that. But the next step up from using this device would be like a FactoryTalk historian or some type of historian with visualization.
No, Dave, I think the meaning, how do you get more than 100 devices? And yes, you would just purchase a second
Uh,
device, a
yeah.
second appliance and subscription to get more than 100 devices. And so, as Dave mentioned, you can look at it on a machine or a line level. Most folks are looking at it actually on a line level or like an area of the plant, maybe a troublesome area of the plant or an area where they don't, they're not as familiar with the technology, or they think the technicians might need a little further assistance, kind of as a starting point. And then you can always add a second one. I think, Dave, you can set the IP range that it's looking at or something of the nature, right, to help pick the 100 devices that it's actually choosing.
Uh, I I think there's some advanced settings to kind of help uh, slim down what it connects to, but for the most part, you're just going to give it a static IP or DHCP, and it's just going to scan, and whatever it sees first, it will report on.
Yeah,
I
we
think
can
you
double
can limit
check that.
the
There is some way to do that, and I don't remember exactly what it is. I want to say it's IP ranges, but um,
yeah. There's advanced settings, and when you set up the IP settings, um, they give you a little bit more control over uh, what which IP range you wanna set it in.
but to go back to your original question, yes, over 100, you just add a second device.
Okay, well, going back to was it second or third slide where you talk about the enterprise level then. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have one of these on, say, every single line, how do you do a comparison with all of that? Is that something that requires the historian to do it, or some other piece of software?
Yeah, so you would use a different piece of software like a FactoryTalk Historian, or since they have the connector in the PCT ThingWorks, you would use that to kind of collect that data into a higher level, like a system level or an enterprise. Um, yeah,
Is that where FactoryTalk Analytics, the card that goes in the ControlLogix processor, comes in, starts coming in? Solutions like that
yeah,
is another step up.
yeah. So that would be like the next step up. And to get to the enterprise level, yeah, you would need an historian to get the data from this device.
But I think you could use FactoryTalk Analytics, that card, to start doing some of that higher level enterprise analytics. No, as a pure analytics solution.
Yeah,
We can send some in the follow-up email that'll go out probably tomorrow or maybe the day after. We can send some additional information about kind of that next step up and the options that are available there.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Sure. Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else before we close up? Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Dave Flores. I appreciate you covering this topic. It is a solid starting point. It is very little investment and very little effort, if you will, because nobody has a lot of excessive time on their hands these days to get started with the analytics journey. So thank you for covering that. As you guys know, we have these every Tuesday. I mentioned it earlier. The full schedule can be found at rumsey.com/training. And with that, I think next week's topic is around wireless, if I remember correctly, but you could check it out there. With that, we will wrap up. Thanks, Dave. Everybody have a great rest of your Tuesday.